awesome.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. In this fun road test review video, we'll be looking at Honda's 2023 Rebel 1100 DCT. I want to give a special shout out to Steven for letting me review this motorcycle. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. This bike has some nice mods on it. It has the protectors for the saddlebags. It also has the nice sounding, but not too loud, Kaufman's exhaust on it. I really like the tone of that. It also has a removable GV top box to increase the touring capability. This particular bike is the T version of the Rebel 1100, and that stands for touring. And so this bike comes with the small batwing fairing that's attached to the handlebars. The headlight on the Rebel is a very bright LED unit, and it also comes with the color-matched hard locking luggage, and that just gives this bike a little bit of touring ability that it lacks in the naked form. In this video, we'll talk about the history of the Rebel 1100. We'll also look at the specs of the bike and talk about the performance figures on it. And then in a little bit, we'll take this bike out on the road to see what it's like to ride. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Honda's Rebel line debuted in the mid-80s, and historically, it has been a line of motorcycles that were small displacement, parallel twin, cruiser-style motorcycles. With the introduction of the Rebel 1100, Honda introduced the first big bore Rebel model. I honestly think that this is the first Rebel motorcycle that is actually deserving of the name. The Rebel 1100 is powered by a 1083cc parallel twin engine. It's a liquid-cooled, fuel-injected, 4-valve per cylinder engine. The PGM fuel injection system is fed by a 46mm throttle body. The engine features a 10.1:1 compression ratio. At the rear wheel, this motor puts out 81 horsepower at 7,000 RPM. It also puts out 68 foot-pounds of torque at 5,000 RPM. The transmission in the DCT, or dual clutch transmission version of the Rebel 1100, is essentially an automatic transmission. Because this engine is a fly-by-wire design, meaning that there's no hard connection between the throttle and the engine, it's all computer controlled. It allows this bike to have multiple different rider modes and transmission settings. Those modes include a manual mode, and so you can actually shift up and down through the automatic transmission with some levers that are on the left side of the bike. You can also place the transmission in the standard mode, and that is going to be where most riders are going to spend most of their time, and it just operates as a typical automatic transmission. You can also select rain mode, and that will adjust your shift points on your transmission and the power output of your engine such that it's going to deliver the smoothest power to the rear wheel. That's an added safety feature. There's also a customizable rider mode where you can choose your engine power settings, you can choose your shift points, you can also choose the amount of engine braking that's available. And finally, you can select the sport mode, and that delivers the maximum power output on the engine. It's much more aggressive on the shift points as well. When we take this bike out on the road, I'm going to go through the different ride modes, and I'll talk about how each one performs. They perform in a markedly different fashion, and so it's really interesting to see how those work. The 6-speed automatic transmission in this bike is mated to chain final drive. Looking at the frame layout on the Rebel, it is a steel tube trellis type frame. It features 28 degrees of rake and 4.3 inches of trail, and that gives this bike a very nice steering geometry and incredibly good handling for a cruiser style motorcycle. The wheelbase on the 1100 version of the Rebel is 59.8 inches. If we look at the front suspension, it has conventional 43mm front forks. These are adjustable for spring preload, and they have 4.8 inches of suspension travel. Out back, it has dual shocks, and these are also adjustable for spring preload, and they have 3.7 inches of suspension travel. Both front and back suspension units are provided by Showa. In the braking department, the Rebel has a single disc brake up front, and that is acted on by a 4-piston caliper. Out back, it also has a single disc brake, and that is acted on by a 4-piston caliper as well. The Rebel features ABS brakes and traction control as well. One thing you notice right away when you look at the Rebel 1100 is the low seat height on it. It has a 27.5-inch seat height. That makes this bike accessible for a very wide range of riders. I'm a taller rider at 6'4", so I'm a little bit outside of the scope of the rider sizes that this bike was designed for, but I can still ride this bike with ease. Wet weight on the DCT T version of the Rebel is 542 pounds. Fuel capacity on the Rebel is 3.6 gallons, and that includes a 1.1 gallon reserve. So it's a little bit limited in range. Average fuel economy is right around 38 miles per gallon. The T model specifically has the lockable hard bags, and the carrying capacity of both of the bags is a 35-liter combined carrying capacity. It also has a 3-liter storage unit underneath the seat. While that's really not enough luggage capacity for long-distance touring, it is nice to have the bags. These are very handy if you want to go get groceries or do errands, in addition to doing some light-duty touring on the bike. The T version also sports this batwing fairing. For as small as it is, it gives a good amount of wind protection, and I'll talk about that more on the test ride. Another really nice feature that the Rebel has is the electronic cruise control that maintains your speed wherever you set it, and that is a wonderful feature on any motorcycle. Looking at the instrumentation on the Rebel, it has a nice LCD display that displays the speedometer. It also has a tachometer. It shows which ride mode you're in. It has a fuel gauge. It has a trip computer. It also has a gear indicator, in addition to some other features as well. All right, enough talk. What is the Rebel like to ride? I'm going to gear up. I'll bring the camera along. Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Honda's Rebel 1100T DCT. The first thing I'm noticing is that the seating position has me sitting kind of squarely on my backside. I've got my feet up a little bit higher than I'm used to and a little bit more forward than I'm used to. But I really like the handlebar layout on this motorcycle. I think that's very nice. It gives good control. The motor is smooth. I'm tooling along right now at about 53 miles an hour in 6th gear, revving just over 3,000 RPM. I am in standard mode, and so this is just the regular automatic mode. And we'll make a turn up here and we'll see how this automatic transmission functions. Very nice, very intuitive. The turn in into the corner is beautiful. This bike is not flighty, but it definitely handles with a level of ease that you really would not expect from a cruiser style motorcycle. I'm going to shift this into sport mode. And right away it drops 2 gears. And holds the gear. Oh yeah. I had it downshift pretty aggressively coming into the corner. Oh, that's awesome. One nice thing when I'm in sport mode, if I don't like the gear that it's in, I can still shift manually up or down with the hand controls. One thing I'm noticing right this second is it's a little bit aggressive on and off throttle. It's very interesting. By changing the mode that you're in, it completely changes the demeanor of the motorcycle. I'm going to go back to standard mode now. And once again, I have a mild-mannered cruiser-style automatic motorcycle. Yeah, it's just shocking the difference in performance between those two modes. And I really find that entertaining, that if I was letting a less experienced rider ride this motorcycle, I would have them leave it in the standard mode. And I think the way that the transmission shifts in standard mode is very intuitive. And in standard mode, even when I give it a good bit of gas at lower RPM, it's not super quick to downshift. Suspension compliance on this motorcycle is actually shockingly much better than I was expecting. I have ridden other bikes with super low seat heights and they had much less suspension travel in the rear, and this is actually tolerable on sharper bumps, and I'm very thankful for that. Wind protection that's given by this batwing fairing is actually quite nice. I'm getting no wind on my hands, no real wind on my chest. I get a little bit of wind on my helmet, and it actually blocks a little bit of wind from hitting the tops of my legs and helps me stay a little bit warmer on a cool day. I'm going to go ahead and put the bike in manual mode, and that's just holding my gear until I upshift. There's that nice bark when you downshift. It actually blips the throttle a little bit. And nicely leaves it in gear. Handling is just amazing. Very nice. I really like the tone of the Kaufman's exhaust on this bike. It sounds nice. It has some rumble on deceleration. It sounds great when you downshift and it blips the throttle, but it's not booming and it's not super annoying once you're maintaining a steady state speed. Quiets down quite nicely. Even in standard mode, when you give the bike the beans, it gets up and goes. giving it the gas, it kind of holds the shift much longer. I've ridden Honda's NC700X DCT, and that bike always managed to feel somewhat utilitarian. Even when you were really getting on it, it was certainly adequate, but never really exciting. And this bike has much sharper handling than that bike. It also has a power plant that is truly entertaining when you get on it. It's got plenty of character. It's got nice sound to it. I'll put it in sport mode just for a little run up through the gears. Yeah, that was not full throttle, but you could definitely wheelie on this. That's stout. That's really fun. Unlike some other manufacturers, you're actually able to shift this one between the modes while you're riding it. You don't have to pull over and stop. That's a nice feature in case you're on the highway and get caught in rain. You can switch it easily to rain mode. And additionally, if you're just cruising down through, you can do that. And then if you want to switch it up when you get to the curvy roads and put it in sport mode, you can certainly do that as well. One last thing I'll touch on here is the brakes on this motorcycle. And normally I'd probably complain a little bit about the single disc brake up front, but it does deliver adequate stopping power, and I think the brakes on this bike feel well matched to the acceleration and the weight of the bike. Because the fuel injection program changes the throttle mapping as well as the shift mapping when you shift between standard mode and power mode and rain mode, one thing that I would just caution riders about is that any given amount of throttle, if you're shifting between the modes, that given amount of throttle gives a certain and different amount of acceleration. So if I kind of twist the throttle in standard mode, it picks up in a certain fashion, and if I'm used to that and I switch it over to the power mode, the bike behaves much more aggressively. And if you're not used to it, it can actually be a little bit surprising, especially given the aggressiveness of the power mode in this bike. And this is the same across all of the bikes that have the different power modes. I think it's better for riders to get used to one specific power setting and to leave it in that power setting for the majority of the time. And that way they just know what's going to happen with the bike when they dial up X amount of throttle. I've got the cruise control on. I'm going to set it. And that's nice. The bike just maintains the speed, and to kick it off, I just hit the brake a little bit. I'm really pleasantly surprised by how much I like this Rebel. I like the quality of the suspension and the ride on it. It's very nice. It's not nearly as harsh as I was anticipating. The handling on it is very easy. It's stable and yet nimble at the same time. and the character of the bike can completely change from being a relaxing cruiser style motorcycle to being much more aggressive and much more sporty feeling. And when you get about 4,500 RPM, that engine just comes on strong, and it's really eye-opening. It's kind of a hoot to ride.
All right, man, what a lot of fun. I can't tell you guys how excited I am to ride a cruiser style motorcycle from Japan that is no longer a Harley clone. I love the fact that Honda went its own way with the styling on this motorcycle. I think Honda did a really good job with this bike, making it look aggressive and modern. I love the way that they blacked out the whole bike, and they have really done a thorough job on that. And they've even blacked out the fork legs, and those are like a black chrome. And that's just a really cool touch. I love that Honda went its own way with the design of the engine in this motorcycle. It is a high performance parallel twin motor instead of the lower performance air-cooled V-twin style of motor. And when ridden aggressively, there's no denying that the Rebel 1100 has serious sporting potential. And on a winding back road, a well-ridden Rebel 1100 is a force to be reckoned with. I love the fact that the Rebel 1100 is available with a manual transmission and the automatic transmission, and it really highlights the technical superiority of the Japanese products. To me, the Rebel 1100 really harkens back to a time where the Japanese cruiser style motorcycles were technologically advanced, and really in a performance sense they were ahead of the rest of the world on their performance cruisers. And while those performance cruisers were actually quicker in a straight line than this current Rebel 1100, this bike handles so much easier. This bike is also much easier to ride for a much wider range of rider capability, and I think Honda did a knockout job on this motorcycle. I'm really surprised that I like it as much as I do. If I have any complaints about the Rebel, it's really associated with the seating position on the bike, with the very low seat height and the mid-mounted pegs that are set somewhat high. It gives very good cornering clearance when you're riding in a sporting mode. However, it places all the rider's weight on their backside, and the small driver's seat really locks you in one position. And with the mid-mounted pegs, you can't kind of lift yourself up off of the seat and kind of give you a little bit of relief there. And you can't really move forward or backwards easily while you're riding on longer rides. And so after about half an hour, you really start to feel it. And my limit on this, without getting to a place where I can stop and stretch my legs a little bit, is about an hour. After riding this Rebel and experiencing how good this bike functions as a unit, I would love to see Honda bring out a model and maybe call it a Nighthawk 1100 and have a more standard style tank and a higher, more standard style flat seating position. Maybe make it a retro style bike. Honda's done such a good job with the frame and the layout of this bike and the engine and transmission. I think it would be a good basis to expand this model lineup. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If there are any Rebel 1100 fans out there, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative. And until next time, enjoy the ride.
Oh yeah.